we have one of our customers who does security automation. So they basically make sure that companies are compliant with various security frameworks. So what they're doing is we just went through our SOC 2 certification, and one of the things that you have to check was, yeah, it was a journey. So like basically, I have this in our office over here. There's a small like desk or a small like cabinet which has these papers and stuff. So one of the things that you need to pass in the SOC 2 compliance is there a secure place to store confidential material inside the office? So we had to take a photo of this and put that as evidence inside our evidence library. And now, like evidence like that can be validated by an LLM to confirm that this is actually a place where you can lock material instead of having a human review it. So just like small stuff like that.
Today we have Akash Sharma, CEO and co-founder at Vellum, which went through YC in winter 2023. And the company is enabling developers to start, develop, and evaluate LLM applications easily. And he talked to over 1,500 people at different companies using LLMs in production. And him and Anita, who also works there, have a pretty unique perspective on the space because of the vast amount of customers they work with. Before starting Vellum, Akash went to UC Berkeley and then worked 5 years at McKinsey in Silicon Valley. And Akash, I know you just came up with 2 fun facts, so you got to give me that.
Let's do it. So fun fact 1, first of all, thanks for having us here. Hi, I really appreciate it. Super excited to share our learnings. LLM development is a whole new like paradigm, and there's so many new challenges that have appeared with this new way of doing development. So we're excited to share the learnings that we've gotten like along the journey. So 2 fun facts. So first of all, fun fact 1 was in my first semester of college, when I was like in college, basically just getting started with college. I think I didn't know the basic principles of like diet and fitness and all that kind of stuff. So I think I lost 40 pounds in 4 months. That's pretty crazy, actually.
Because so people have freshman 15 and you lost 40 pounds. So you did the other way around.
Yeah. Just the reverse. I think I was working out every day and I ate like 500 calories a day. It was pretty bad. It was actually scary. So that's fun fact number 1. Fun fact number 2 is that's again like kind of fitness related, but much further down the road. I actually flew from Germany to Hawaii for a half marathon, stayed in Hawaii for 2 days, and went back to Germany. So that was like a across the globe trip, basically. Half marathon, did that, and then next day flew back to Germany. That was fun. So broadly speaking, I think there's 3 or 4 different like types of challenges we see customers facing when building their LLM applications. Challenge number 1 is more around like data and experimentation. So think of it as like there's so many different models. You have access to so much data. How do you get your data correctly into these models, and how do you structure the prompts correctly? There's challenges associated with prompt engineering, with OpenAI was Anthropic, or Mistral 8x22b, which is the latest model that came out. GPT-4 just came out with their update last week, which apparently is really good. It actually beats the old GPT-4 Turbo pretty hands down. So new models keep coming out. Claude 3 family of models is really good. New models keep coming out. New prompting techniques keep coming out. New retrieval techniques keep coming out. There's this whole like concept of experimentation, and how do you keep trying out different architectures, different prompts to solve your particular use case. And each use case requires maybe like a slightly customized approach. People have different requirements on quality, cost, latency, and oftentimes it's like a trial and error process, honestly. And we often see like non-technical people getting involved in the development process too. So this whole like aspect of experimentation, like how do you come up with the right prompts, architecture, models for your particular task at hand? But closely tied to that is the second like aspect, which is evaluation, because experimentation is only as good as your evaluation framework. Because with LLM development, we've seen people take like hours and hours, and maybe even days and weeks tweaking prompts and tweaking test cases. But ultimately, like what we see successful is a test-driven development approach, where if you define your test cases and a testing methodology and a goalpost, basically that you want to reach X amount of accuracy before sending something to production, that's sometimes like a successful approach, because that gives comfort to developers that this system is going to work reliably in production. So experimentation is only as good as your eval framework. So we see these 2 happen go pretty hand in hand. And the last piece is, once your application is in production, there's a layer of like monitoring and lifecycle management that we see developers needing. So keeping track of all the inputs and outputs that the system had in production, what the quality of that was, version controlling any changes, and being able to like revert back to old versions in case something bad happens in production. So these 3, 4 pillars like work hand in hand: experimentation, evaluation, monitoring, and we were seeing like various different kinds of personas also getting involved in the development processes. ML engineers, there's non-technical people, there's software engineers, there's subject matter experts with a human in the loop evaluation. So new challenges are emerging, and we're seeing this happen across companies of all sizes, from small startups all the way to like large enterprises.
Sounds great. What was one super surprising thing that you learned after talking and working directly with customers who are trying to go from experimentation to something better?
Yeah, I mean, super surprising thing is we learn like new properties of models that are pretty surprising. For instance, I think there was a customer doing a data extraction task. So there's one surprising thing is like around the model properties, which I'll talk about in a second. And the other surprising thing I would say is about just like how people think about evaluations. So we'll talk about both of those. The first one is pretty crazy, right? Like we were working with a customer who was doing a data extraction task on on like some legal contracts, and these legal contracts were 30, 40, 50 pages long. So they're pretty long, and Claude 3 Opus, like on our eval suite, Claude 3 Opus was performing the best. But there were some test cases where Claude 3 Opus just got it completely wrong, like completely wrong. So it wasn't giving the answer in the correct JSON format. And we were all super confused, like why this happened. And apparently there was some single character, which was basically a white space. I think there was a special syntax of that white space. I forget like what was the specific code of that character, but that white space threw the model off completely because the model hadn't seen that token in its training data before. And because it saw that special character in there, it didn't know how to respond in that 30-page contract and got the answer completely wrong. So that basically reinforced to us that testing and eval is important, because if a system like that was sent into production with 10 test cases and it saw a future contract with that special character in, and it would have gotten the answer completely wrong. So now we know that there's, in that example, we can come up with some safeguard mechanism in case we see a character like that down the road. So models have like weird properties because of how they've been trained. And the other, like on how customers do their evaluations, people just have very different criteria on quality, cost, latency, and everyone has their own requirements. Some people are more risk tolerant, like some people are less risk tolerant. Some people are very cost sensitive, some people are not. For some people, latency is more important. So there's no one like clear function that we see the industry following in terms of what it takes to take something to production. Everyone has their own requirements, and our goal is to provide a platform that helps people meet their requirements in the most efficient way possible.
That makes sense. I'm curious how, I don't know if you've noticed anything different between like software developers trying to do LLM eval and experimentation versus like people who come from ML engineering backgrounds and data science background. Do you see like a difference there at all?
That's a good question. I actually see a difference more in the technical versus non-technical people doing the prompt engineering process. So I'd club the ML engineers and software engineers in one persona, the technical persona, and like the non-technical folks could be designers, like salespeople, product managers, like people who are less technical. I see some differences there, and generally what I'm seeing is that prompt engineering is basically a new development, like new language. It's a new way of interacting with technology, like natural language interface. And it's you can write a simple prompt. Just say, you can say something like, write me a sales email with like topic ABC or something. That's a simple prompt that'll give you a response. But over time, what we see is that there are prompting techniques, and prompting in itself is an analytical approach. Like you need to have pretty structured set of instructions and formatting to get the best response in a reliable, consistent manner from these models. So we see people who are more analytically oriented, generally in the technical camp, tend to write better prompts than non-technical people. And as people write prompts, there are also considerations of cost and latency, because longer prompts are slower and more expensive. So if you end up writing a super long prompt to clear all your test cases, but that prompt ends up being slow and expensive, that also is a problem. So that again requires some sort of like analytical approach where the prompt needs to be well structured. It also needs to be of a reasonable length for both like cost and latency requirements.
Sounds great. So it sounds like it doesn't matter if somebody works in technical or non-technical, as long as they're somewhat analytical about the way they approach different
Yeah,
problems, then they'll have
it's like a
good
new
results.
skill that people need to learn. Like prompting is just a new skill, and if people are receptive to learning that new skill, they will ramp up quickly.
Sounds great. One last question. How do you feel about prompting as like the new programming for like the next generation? So I know like Jensen Huang mentioned like, oh, you shouldn't be learning how to code anymore and stuff like that. So do you feel like prompting would be something that instead of like right now everyone's saying, oh, you got to go to a school and learn like STEM, like learn programming, right? It's like the language that you need to know. But would that be replaced by prompt engineering at some point? Do you feel like?
It's like the future is kind of hard to predict, right? So because like some people will say that prompting itself will go away because models will be able to do everything out of the box. Some people will say that there'll be application layer companies that are built to solve specific pain points, which are just able to interact with humans in a very like natural way without needing to write complex prompt, and humans will be able to get the thing that they need to get done. Some people might say that no, prompting will remain as is. So I think it's kind of hard to predict where the world is going to end, and that's primarily because we're still on the S curve of model development. So like we're in the steep end of the S curve. We don't know how good the models are going to be. I was listening to a podcast from Sam Altman recently, and he said that GPT-5 is going to be significantly better. But he also, I don't think, knows like how far out this technology can go with more and more training data and more compute resources. So all I think we can do today is like knowing what we know. We need to be at the forefront of like as people, like as all of us, we need to be at the forefront of what's possible with the current generation of models. And if we are there, and if we are just like adaptable to the latest prompting techniques, latest ways of building applications, I'm sure like we will evolve into like just whatever the right thing is for maybe 5 or 10 years down the road. I don't know what that might be, given both there's more and more application level companies and the model quality is improving pretty significantly right now.
Awesome. All right. I am out of questions at the moment, so you gotta take the lead now.
Yeah, I guess what we can also, I guess one of the interesting things that I've also learned that I can share with people here is there are there's pretty cool ways of double checking the confidence level that a model has on a particular task. So in one of the cases that we were working on for a customer, they were operating in a regulated industry, and in these regulated industries, they wanted to make sure that the chatbot that they're working on was always going to be compliant. So basically, the concept here was that chatbot was giving answers to various user questions, and as the answers were going out, there was a guardrail prompt that was being used in parallel. And the guardrail prompt was just all it was doing was checking whether it's in compliance with the regulation or not, like a binary classification prompt, which would determine if the response is compliant or not. And that's great. Like you can do prompt engineering on the guardrail prompt, you can do testing on the guardrail prompt, and make sure that you are getting like a good quality results from that guardrail prompt, and the guardrail prompt is actually reliable. So basically what we did was set up a binary classifier, tested it at scale. But what we also learned is that even if the model said that, yes, it is compliant, sometimes it wasn't when the human was reviewing it. So we're like, this is interesting. Like why, despite all this testing and prompt engineering, the model is saying this. So then we went into a more advanced property of these models. It's in the OpenAI API docs. I don't think Anthropic has this, but this is log probs. And log probs basically is an additional property returned in the API call, which shows the probability distribution of all the tokens that the model is outputting. So for instance, if the model outputs, say, a sentence saying that I am an artificial intelligence system, that sentence may have maybe 12 or 13 tokens. The log probs property will show the probability distribution of all the tokens in the response. So for each of those 12 tokens, it'll show you what the distribution of all the possible tokens were. So in this, back to my example of the regulatory classification problem, basically we were outputting a single token of yes or no, and the log probs was giving a confidence level of how likely was it that the answer was yes or no. So in the cases where the model got it wrong, its probability was actually pretty low. So its probability of saying that it was actually compliant was only 60 or 65%. Yeah, that log probs example is what I'm talking about. So basically, what the additional parameter we added to the model was the model needs to be like 90 or 95% confident, or even 99% confident, for us to accept the guardrail prompt response. Because if it's just 60% confident, it may not be good enough. So there's these small techniques, basically. So guardrail prompt with log probs is, I'd say, like an advanced way of making sure that you remain in compliance with a regulation or a rule or something. I hope that makes sense. Like it's just a more advanced property of the model.
That's super cool. Okay, so tell me if I'm incorrect. So you're making the model spitting out either a yes or no answer, and you're also checking the level of confidence of that answer. And then you say if you're not very confident,
Yeah.
because it's like LLMs, like they have to give you an answer, right? You can't just be like, I don't want to give you an answer because I don't know. So based on this like probability or like confidence level, you either accept or deny that output. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. So that's one of the interesting things we learned as we were doing this whole journey with one of our customers. One of the other, I'd say, like interesting things that could be a discussion topic for the whole group is I've often entered into discussions with folks on whether chatbot and like a chatbot interface is the right interface to interact with LLMs or not. And that's an open topic. Like ChatGPT made chatbots incredibly popular. Chat is intuitive, but it's unclear if that's the right way of interacting with LLMs or not. There are other options. So it's a new UX paradigm. So I'm curious to see how companies adopt, like outside of chatbot, how they use AI in consumer facing or like user facing applications. I've
Yeah.
seen
So for
these buttons of like just adding a button on each post and trying to get more like information about those posts. I'm not a big fan of that, but again, like it's a new UX paradigm.
I want to ask you, how do you feel about two things? So one is voice interface, and two is like the Perplexity AI kind of interface. So kind of like Q and if they call it the Q and question answering engine or something, but it's literally just a chat interface with more flares to it. So wonder what your thoughts are on those user experience.
Voice and Perplexity AI. So I think Perplexity AI and even Inflection Pi, I think both of those were interesting. Both of those are pretty cool. Voice is it like I'd say like on the voice front, are you expecting the LLM also to respond back with voice and just have a conversation with the model, just like we're having a conversation right now?
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that. Maybe that could be interesting, but I don't know. Like, we have to think back on like what are the main problems that we want to solve for users in like various applications, right? So one of our customers, I'm thinking out loud right now, but one of our customers is actually doing this voice-based task. So what they're doing is they are helping frontline workers in hazardous industries. So think like mining and construction and just like frontline workers doing safety checks. So this frontline worker A walks around a piece of equipment and checks whether has a whole checklist of like 30 or 40 things that need to be confirmed every day before that piece of equipment is operated. Before using LLMs, they would just have a piece of paper where they would fill all this out, scan it, and like put it in the system. But now they have a voice interface with a phone, and that voice is converted to structured text using an LLM. So that's interesting. I think voice could be relevant based on the situation. Where in this case, as a frontline worker who shouldn't be typing and like responding back, their voice could make sense, like completely make sense. But maybe in a more desk kind of setting, I'm not sure. People should honestly be given their options on how they want to interact with the LLMs, um, and and maybe the tone, maybe the way the LLM responds should also be customized to each user, because I don't want like a certain company to like predetermine the prompts and those should be the responses that I get back, right? Like maybe there should be like different responses that users get based on their own preferences if they know how to do prompting. So that could also just be like a different way that we see users interact with LLMs down the road.
Yeah. So this is something that I started doing recently with my app, which is kind of like a copycat of like Vercel's generative UI. So, based on the kind of query, you get a very different design of the kind of message you get back. It's still like a chat interface, but if you ask about like a stock price, you get like a chart back instead of like just a message about the stock and stuff like that. So I wonder if you've seen that kind of use case a lot in your customers, or whether or not opinion on this kind of generative UI.
I think Vercel is taking it in a very interesting direction. I think the generative UI, we haven't seen it like, I've definitely seen what Vercel is up to. And I think it makes a ton of sense. We haven't seen too many applications of that just yet. But what we have seen is people trying to do a lot more multimodal stuff. Multimodality is getting more and more interesting. So For instance, we have one of our customers who does security automation. So they basically make sure that companies are compliant with various security frameworks. So what they're doing is we just went through our SOC 2 certification, and one of the things that you have to check was yeah, it was a journey. So like basically I have this in our office over here, there's a small like desk which or a small like cabinet which has these papers and stuff. So one of the things that you need to pass in the SOC 2 compliance is there a secure place to store confidential material inside the office? So we had to take a photo of this and put that as an evidence inside our evidence library. And now like evidence like that can be validated by an LLM to confirm that this is actually a place where you can lock material instead of having a human review it. So just like small stuff like that could be makes things easier. Now video would be like Sora's not out yet, but video would be even more interesting. So I don't know what people are going to do with video. I also heard about I forget the company's name, but there's a company which was really good with generative music. So you give it a simple prompt and it would make really good music.
Like Suno AI.
What? Suno AI?
Yeah.
I forget the company name. Maybe that's what it is. Yeah, maybe that's what it is. But generative music is also very interesting, where you can just put the genre and you can put, yeah, exactly, you can put the genre and you can put the types of songs you want to create, and it'll give you a pretty cool sounding piece of music. So the future is very interesting.
Sounds great. This is what I normally ask all of my guests, which is, if I'm not doing any sort of like eval stuff today, or anything of like the kind of best practices that you should be doing, what is like the 80-20 rule for this? Like, what is something that I can do that takes 20% of my effort, but that gives me 80% of the results?
It depends on what you're trying to do, right? So if you're trying to just get up to speed on using these models and just building something, evals is probably not that important in your case. I think the 20% approach to get 80% of the value is actually just trying to build a prototype of something, of anything, just having a simple prompt, connecting it to a vector database maybe, and having a functioning like interface to use that application, and having other people use that application will be super helpful for you to just learn what's possible and like what kinds of tasks can be achieved by these models. But once you try to take a system to production and have more stringent quality, cost, latency requirements, unfortunately, there's not that much of an 80-20 solution. Because these models are non-deterministic, you need to have like a rigorous evaluation process to make sure that things are stable once in production. And that's the chasm that we've just generally heard people in the industry face between 2023 to 2024, because 2023 was super easy to do what I just said earlier, have an 80-20 prototype and put it out there and see what people do. And then you watch like public debacles happen with the Air Canada situation, where there was something where they just canceled the flight ticket or something, I forget. But there are many like public debacles that have happened with AI because there was not enough testing and evaluation done before it went into production. So yeah, unfortunately, there's depending on your risk tolerance, there's usually no 80-20 solution for getting something into like stable production use for a large number of users.
That makes sense. Yeah, I remember people were getting like trying to get free cars from Chevrolet by playing around with the chatbot.
Yeah,
and that I could see like some of the prospects even in our city were thinking about building chatbots, and they saw those examples, especially from Air Canada, and they were like, yeah, let's maybe like just not do it right now because the press is too bad. So yeah, those things definitely could use some eval for sure.
But on the other hand, right, for people who can get it right, like Klarna, I think they had a 40 million euro improvement to their bottom line, which is a massive increase in enterprise value. So I think that's over $1 billion of increase in enterprise value, depending on like what valuation multiple you put on that bottom line improvement. That's huge, just by using this technology effectively. So there's benefits to it too, like clear like business value that can be created.
Yeah, so I feel like this is something that you should probably touch on, whether that's Klarna or somebody else. But what's like the most successful case study that you've seen so far?
Most successful case study. So let's see. So I think there's it's very like finding cost reduction initiatives like what Klarna has done, like customer support, chatbot automation, operations automation, like data extraction, form filling, those kinds of use cases. There's plenty. Like there's so many different applications that we see where you can like automate away human work systematically by having a large number of test cases and confirming something works in production. You can quantify that and get some like clear business value out of it. That's easy. I haven't seen that many revenue generating and like top line improvement use cases. The ones that I have seen and the ones that do just immediately come to mind would be GitHub Copilot, would be Notion AI, would be I think Microsoft is also coming out of the Copilot, but they're bundling it as part of their Office 365 suite. So it's not like a new item in their revenue thing, but they're just like bundling it as part of the whole thing. That's cool. But those are two or three products that have clearly like taken the world by a storm, and they have increased the revenue of those companies pretty significantly. So I think companies are still figuring it out, honestly, in terms of what are the like big either top line improvements or bottom line improvements that they can do using this technology. But yeah, what we are helping them enable is the right like development process to get there.
Okay, that makes sense. I was gonna ask, like, have you seen any use cases that are just like the worst kind of use cases to go into production right now? So for example, like I was playing around with agents in 2023. I just made up my mind back then. I was like, this is no way any of this is going to go into production because it works like 60% of the time, and tool usage is like, it got better with like function calling. A couple models will start supporting function calling in JSON mode.
Yeah.
But then again, like probably requires a couple of layers of like prompt guarding of some kind to kind of like check the answers. But from your experience, like what's like the use case that people are truly trying to chase, but then haven't been able to to manifest that into like production?
Yeah, I mean, without naming names, there's like many popular frameworks out there which promise a lot, like just like they seem amazing and magical, but they work 60-80% of the time, similar to what you just mentioned, Hi. But it for a company, for a corporation to use that in production, it seems risky. So at least what we see, like recently we went public with a chatbot that was built, that Redfin built on our platform. So Redfin is the housing company where they help consumers, just like the chatbot just helps consumers with various things like answering details about a property or scheduling an apartment tour or meeting a real estate agent or something. So it's just a chatbot that helps with conversations essentially that a user might want to have on the Redfin platform. Now, what they're doing is they are controlling and providing effective guardrails on what kinds of actions these users can do by applying specific prompts and specific API calls. So for instance, one of the API calls that they specifically want to have is like schedule property tour API. As simple as that. Like to make that property tour appointment, you need to collect ABC structured fields, get those fields from the user in a conversational way, and make a request to schedule the property tour. Once the tour is scheduled, send an email with all this information before the tour, 24 hours before the tour, send a reminder, and maybe a push notification on the Redphone iPhone app, like however it gets structured downstream, but it's like a contained control task. A lot of frameworks out there seem a bit more like magical that all of this can happen. But we've just seen more success with more control over what the LLM can and cannot do.
I agree with that. Initially, my app was kind of like a do all be all, and that's just something that I realized from working with early adopters as well, which is they see a chat box and they're like, "Oh, this thing can do anything. I can just type whatever I want in here." But then I kind of adopted this something similar to what you said, which is what I personally call a finite state machine, which is something that people would use in like video game development, which is at any state the AI can only do like 3 things.
Yeah.
And then if it wants to do more than that, it gotta move to a different state.
Yeah.
So that kind of like keeps the risk boundaries smaller. So that's been working out for me. So it seems like people try to adopt these things to kind of like mitigate this thing can do anything, and then starts to break kind of use cases. So yeah, makes sense.
But it doesn't like that's I think a good logical approach, which we also recommend to our customers. But it sometimes people feel disappointed that AI doesn't feel as magical as it can be, right? And that's disappointing to people. And it's a weird balance that we also see. It's like it's been a consistent theme since ChatGPT came out all of last year and also going into Q1 of this year, where CEOs of big companies like Fortune 500 companies are trying to have like widespread AI adoption, and they want like so many cool things, but actually like developing those solutions requires a lot more, just like a lot more thought and a lot more like a lot more guardrails on what the AI system can and cannot do. And there's just a gap sometimes on what the hope is and how it gets delivered.
Cool. Do you have content you want to show us, or do you want me to just keep asking questions?
There's no content as such. You can just keep asking questions. Yeah, Manas.
Okay, we got one question. Go for it.
Thank you. So I have a question. I don't know if I can explain it properly. So in terms of the smaller scale businesses, not like big corporations, how do you see the future for these kind of small or even one-person businesses? How can they use these models to basically be more, I don't know, more efficient, more creative, or so basically my question is that what do you think that it's the biggest potential of these models in a smaller scale for people, like for contractor, for smaller businesses?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question, right? I think it just depends on the specific business and the specific needs ultimately. So let's talk about like just a prosumer use case where any of us who's just probably working in some company has like various tasks, right? Like we might need to write an email, we might need to post on social media, we might need to respond to an email, there's a lot of text-based tasks. In cases like that, maybe LinkedIn could have a AI generated like button where you can write a post, which it already does. Then Gmail or Superhuman, the email clients, could have a way to respond to emails or summarize emails. You might go into a CRM software like HubSpot and Salesforce, and they might have an AI solution. So like angle one basically is the vendors themselves may have a way to use AI as part of your existing workflow. Option two is you go to ChatGPT or you go to Claude, basically OpenAI or Anthropic, and have a conversation with the chatbot to get some of your tasks done and maybe help you with some research. It can just be like intelligence on demand, which can help. For example, if you are a restaurant owner and you want to modify your menu, you can just chat with this chatbot and try to modify your menu and get some ideas based on what this model has seen over its like big training data. So you can just use off-the-shelf like AI models, like on-demand intelligence. And the third approach might be you can then go in and use the API directly and try to create a product experience for your end users. So the company that I was talking about, where they are helping frontline workers with their with checking their checking the reliability of their systems, of their construction equipment before using it. That's not a massive company. That's like probably 20 or 30 people, somewhere in that range. But they found a specific problem which had pain points for their users, where the users were manually filling out checklists. But instead of that, they can just use voice, convert that to text through a transcription model, and then take that text and use an LLM to see what the user actually said. So that depends on the specific use case of the users of those companies. So yeah, you can just go with the vendor, you can go with like intelligence on demand, or use the API to solve the pain points of your particular user. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does. It does. Yeah, thank you. It does.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Basically,
so it's more about the cost reduction that you mentioned, right? In smaller scale.
Yeah, it's often cost reduction, and basically like wherever you see text-based applications, generally AI can help with getting you a result faster if you just know how to write the right prompts and use it.
That's true. But can I continue? One example, like imagine a business that needs designers, like different type of designers. Do you think in the future these models can replace those? So imagine instead of having designers or having like different department, so using this model, train it on your own data, so whatever you are designing, and just using that. And I think the evaluation part, it's also not that big of a deal if you are reviewing the result yourself. So you just get the designs and do the evaluation yourself and edit that, this kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is very analogous to how when CAD software first came out, right? So earlier, back in the day, I would say like mechanical engineers, civil engineers would make their designs on a piece of paper, and that would take a lot of time, and they would have to have all this like geometrical equipment to make those designs properly. But then software came in, like there was 2D software, there was 3D software. Though that software, which is in the computer, which is still the standard today in general, made their productivity a lot faster. They were able to create a lot more designs. They were able to test those designs under various like simulations and scenarios. But it was still the designers or the engineers in this case who would be creating these designs and then simulating them under various scenarios. Now, if you add an AI layer to that, you can totally imagine the productivity increasing even more, because the AI will create different versions of the designs, but it will still be a human operator, like a engineer, who would be guiding the AI on what kinds of designs to create, how to evaluate and then testing would still be the responsibility of the human. So I think it's just a natural evolution of human productivity from paper to 2D software to AI now.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you.
Yeah.
I got one question for both you guys. So for both Akash and Anita, this is like usually the most important question in any webinar that I do, which is, what is something that you believe in this space in AI that is a little bit controversial or like unpopular? What's your hot take about this stuff? So we'll go with Akash first.
People should be using not just OpenAI. People default to OpenAI as their model because ChatGPT is by far the most popular like consumer-facing AI product. But for production use, there should be more models in production.
Okay, I feel targeted from that statement.
Yeah, for hot takes.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, to build up on what Akash said, I'm just gonna add that it was also my assumption 1 year ago, before all these new models showed up on the scene, is that we've learned how to prompt GPT-4 and all GPT models. And now, as we transition to use all of these other models, we have no idea how these new models are trained. We don't know what types of prompts or instructions, formats, structure they actually require to give us some good quality outputs. And so that's been something that I've been focusing on in the last 2 months, is just showing our customers and just folks in our community that, if you want to utilize a new model, you need to prompt it differently. And not a lot of people understand that, and they kind of fight against that. And I think that in the future, like all of this prompting, it might be, it might follow that same format, or we don't even, gonna prompt it. It's gonna be all automated. But for now, like not a lot of people know that different models, you need to prompt them differently. And there's some specific techniques that you can use to get like not so powerful or knowledgeable model, but that can operate at higher velocity to actually produce better answers than GPT-4, than Claude Opus, and sorts like that. It's just about experimentation and just learning the basics.
We got one question in the queue. Go for it.
Is it me? I just want to have a follow-up question. I don't know. I'm not very knowledgeable about prompt engineering, but if it's not a good question, anyway, where can I find like how to structure good prompt for different models, beside like doing the experimentation and playing with it?
So
that's a great question.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Two suggestions. One is learnprompting.org, and second one is a tool that we just created. You can test that also. It's learnprompting.org. Think of it as like a structured, methodical way of learning the different components of prompt engineering. Highly recommended for people new to the space. And the second one is something that we came up with more recently. Anita, do you want to cover the second one?
Yeah, sure. I was just typing in the chat that it's still staging environment. We're going to be publishing it later today. But essentially what we found out is that all of these techniques that I just mentioned, they can be easily automated with some code or prompt in the back. So what we're building right now is like easy to use tools to convert your GPT-4 prompt to a Claude Opus prompt. Or in other ways, write down what's your objective, what's the task that you want to give to your model. And here's the prompt that will work best with that model. And currently the outputs that we're generating are using Claude Opus models. But in the future, you will see more of these tools being published by Vellum, where you can basically convert any model to another model.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I just love that it's free. Like, I'm gonna use it later today. Like, this is one of my biggest fear, which is all these prompts that I have. One day I'm gonna have to change my model, and I'm gonna have to like rewrite everything. But it sounds like I don't have to.
Yeah.
Yeah, give it a go and let us know.
For sure. One last question. Anything on the horizons for you guys? Anything big coming up, or things that you're excited about?
We're always excited about like new model developments, right? So I mean, there's a lot of stuff on like Vellum's front that is going to be coming out soon that we are pretty excited about, but we're keeping it under wraps. Like there will be a more like thought out promotion methodology around that. But I think on the AI side, very excited about Sora, very excited about GPT-5. And just understanding like how what are the new use cases that are possible with the new generation of models. Because for instance, with I think I was talking about the data extraction task for a large PDF document, right? Claude 3 Opus, which is which at the time was significantly better than GPT-4 Turbo, data extraction tasks possible that were not possible earlier. Because this was an emergent capability of that model because it had such good recall in a large context window. GPT-4 Turbo did not have that. So new use cases might just be possible, which will just create like new opportunities for entrepreneurs, developers all over the world to try out new things. So very excited about that.
Sweet. Anita, you want to add anything? Or
To be honest with you, I'm really excited to build these tools and just work with developers to build this advanced workflows in the back and just make these models to be even better. And so, like, for example, we know that a lot of the architecture that is powering most of the chatbots right now, they use RAG in the back, but I think that there is so little expertise on the market from the developers right now, like software engineers, that actually understand that you can basically build maybe, I don't know, 20 different advanced RAG architectures in the back of your chatbot. And it all depends on your use case, but we're all thinking about that naive version of RAG. And it's just building that one thing. If it doesn't work, okay, Gen AI doesn't work. And it's all about experimentation. It's all about evaluation, and it's all about following the latest advancements in the field. And these tools that we're building, the resources that we're writing, is how can we share more with the community to basically learn all of these techniques on time before they quit on Gen AI. It's like the opportunity is here. What is the best way forward for you to utilize it?
yeah, I love it when companies like you guys just experiment and write white papers, and I just read them and be like, okay, cool. I don't have to spend like 2 days on a Google Colab trying to do this. I'll just take whatever you
That's
learn.
the goal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like that's it. That's the webinar for today. Thank you guys for coming on. I know you're super busy.
Yeah.
But
Thanks for having us. Hi.
absolutely.
thank you for
Hopefully
having
one
us.
day we'll do another one.
Yeah.